I'm a busy person, and so are you most likely. There's just so much out there when it comes to news, sports, music, and little techie stuff. And the best thing I've found to help sort through all this content is Flipboard. Flipboard curates the world's stories so that you can be smarter in your work, life, and play. Choose from thousands of topics to personalize Flipboard and get the latest stories from the best publishers and experts delivered to you 24/7. So, when you see the stories that you want to save or share, just tap the little plus button on there and add them to your private or public collections. It's that simple. Millions of people use this every day, and Flipboard is how people move themselves and the world forward. So get started now at flipboard.com. That's flipboard.com. On today's episode, we'll talk about how NA has a ton of talent and why we need to scout better than what we're doing now. Let's talk about that. Hello, everyone, and once again, welcome to Kings of the Rift, your source for competitive League of Legends news and opinions. I'm your host, Gold Knight, and today we'll be talking about scouting in North America. But before we do that, I want to say thank you to all of you for listening. This podcast is available on iTunes, Anchor FM, and where all the other fine podcasts can be found. Leave me a review if you're on iTunes. It really helps us to get this podcast noticed. Now, anywhere else you can find us, follow the podcast so you can get updates on when a new episode gets posted. Also, if you're on Anchor, I opened up the ability for you guys to help me out and become a subscriber to the podcast. Any bit of help is fantastic, and your support will help me keep making this podcast. With enough support, the episodes will continue to get better. Now, one final thing before we get started. After each episode is posted, I will begin a poll on Twitter to gauge your responses. I encourage all listeners to jump on in and join the conversation. You can find us at Twitter at Kings of the Rift, and a link will be in the description below. Now, what do I mean about you need to fix the talent scouting in North America? If any of you are fans of traditional sports, you might know that there is multiple levels when it comes to talent. There's for example, for baseball, there's single A, double A, triple A, and then the professionals, the MLB. Now, North America has a big enough player base that this is a possibility. Now, I know that they have academy and they do the academy league, this and that. There are different tournaments around the United States with different collegiate areas, but I think Riot needs to sanction these talent leagues. They should have a official high school league. They should have basically semi-pro teams. I honestly think if you look at the TCS, the Tyler 1 Championship Series or whatever, that is such a good way for more teams to be recognized, because talent and teams are just, you can't really find a lot of that because you don't know where to look. You can see it people who play a bunch of solo queue. You can take a look, you can see, oh, well, they're good in solo queue, but how do I know if they're good in a team? And I think that's a lot of the problems with the way that the teams are playing right now and the way that the teams are acquiring talent. They look at their history and they say, oh, well, they've been top 10 challenger for 6 seasons. We have to have this guy. But then once he comes on a team, he just kind of flops. Now, I'm not saying that being challenger or being at the top of the game is actually bad, because it's not. It's fantastic. I would prefer someone to be at the top of the challenger rankings to be on my team. But if they're a better teammate and they can actually play as a team, they'll be very well integrated into any team that is in the NALCS. Now, I think this is something that will develop over the next couple of years, because we have high school leagues, known as like the HS Star League, I think is what that one is. Recently, there's been the partnership with Riot and Play VS, which is another high school level League of Legends like tournament website, which is fantastic. And I would love to see that just explode and do really well. So we have that. We have the Collegiate Pro League. And it's developing. Every day I see on Twitter there is another university that is jumping into the esports scene. And I really hope it doesn't just get swept under the rug. I hope that collegiate esports and high school esports really takes off, because the more talent we have just playing esports is fantastic. For years, we'll look back in 20 years. We'll look back at these days and say, wow, Faker wasn't that good. Or something, we'll say Faker would get spanked by this new guy. It's just kind of an interesting little like idea. Like, the game will continue to develop, and all of esports will continue to develop if we have more people watching, more people being there, and actually supporting esports. Now, I've gotten a little off topic, but I honestly think Riot should, if they're not going to put together an official prospective talent league, like a semi-pro league, then I think someone else needs to do so. I like the idea of the TCS, the Tyler 1 Championship Series, but a lot of it is just kind of a joke. And I'm not meaning that in any offensive way, but I'm saying Tyler 1 is he's a very funny guy. He likes to get hypey, and a lot of it's for his viewers. And that's fantastic. But if that can ever get more expansive, if he can actually have a team around him helping him with the TCS, that's how we get teams who maybe have fallen out of favor, or ex-pros, or even people who want to be pros, into the limelight, because there's plenty of people out there that are really good at League of Legends. We have a whole challenger bracket, which probably any of them could play on a professional team. Now, would they be good at it? We don't know. And that's really where putting them on a team and actually getting them that team experience, where they're communicating, where they're making more macro plays and not just outplaying their opponents who might just be in diamond and matched up with challenger players. That's where talent shines. And honestly, I think that's the spot right there. That's where we need to actually get together and make a league, whether it be a community-based league or a Riot league that is somewhere below. And honestly, if you look at traditional sports, this has happened in the past, and it's made the league that came out on top the actual best league it could be. For example, the NBA. Many of you know the NBA, the National Basketball Association, and there's a history with that league. Now, they were around for about 21 years or so when the American Basketball Association, the ABA, got brought up. They started playing. They had really good teams. Well, really good teams to basically the best people would go to the NBA because that was where the money was. That's where the money was. That's where the fame was. In the ABA, you didn't really have that money or fame. But the ABA invented a lot of the things that the NBA actually does. They messed around with the shot clock. They were starting with like a 30-second shot clock, and then went down to about 24. Then they also invented the 3-point shot. The ABA did. Now, look at the NBA. What do they have now? 3-point shots. And eventually, after a while with the ABA and the NBA, they merged and they took on some of the teams. They expanded the league. And that's something that I think needs to happen with Riot and League of Legends. If someone creates a competitive league and actually gets in there and kind of makes a bigger splash, then maybe they'll actually see something. Maybe the TCS will eventually get absorbed and merged with Riot. If you could do that's fantastic. You increase the NALCS from 10 teams to 14, 15 teams, and you just make it better and more competition, more fun. And that's where, honestly, the whole rest of League of Legends is just fantastic because of it. Now, I think the way that the academy teams are really formed it's just kind of crappy. It seems like it's washed up players who maybe aren't as good as they used to be. Piglet is on an academy team. Moon is on an enemy team or an academy team. Piglet used to be good. He's no longer the star he used to be. And Moon is fantastic, but he's down there. And a lot of times, I don't think that's really fair. But Academy, no one looks at Academy and says, well, I'm really rooting for Team Liquid Academy. Or I'm really looking forward to seeing that CLG Academy match. They don't. And the only reason why last year the Academy League got any kind of real hype around it was because the majority of the C9 team was down in Academy. So that's the only way you're going to actually build Academy if you're going to do that. But I feel like the NALCS is watched so much that the people in Academy just don't get watched. Now, if that's the issue and semi-pro leagues won't work because of viewership, then something needs to change. Something needs to you need to build that hype around it. I don't look at Academy as hypey at all. I've never looked into a match and said, "Ooh, that's going to be a good one." Or, I haven't seen this guy play, so I'm going to watch him play now. No, I just feel like it doesn't really mean anything. Academy doesn't, it's just experience for people. And honestly, that's kind of boring. Now, a lot of the people who play on Academy are never going to be brought up. At least not while they're the people who are playing in their spots are actually still there. If the players who are playing on the main rosters kind of shit the bed or they just don't do as well, then maybe we see academy players. But until then, there's a lot of talent that's just sitting in academy waiting. And there's a lot of academy players who are just not there for good reasons. They're just there because they're under contract. And that makes me upset, kind of. Well, I think that's what I got for talent. Because I'm tapped right out. But stay tuned. I have an announcement. I'll see you guys in the post. So, if any of you are still listening, I opened up a Patreon. That Patreon is patreon.com/Kings of the Rift. And there's multiple different tiers there. So, if you have a couple bucks, send them my way. That would just be fantastic. And I'm looking into actually making shirts and making merch. So let me know if you guys want to see that. And keep an eye out on the YouTubes because pretty soon you might see more content there. Little sneak peek for you guys here that are still listening. So go join me on Twitter. Go take a look. And we'll be fantastic. You guys have a great day. And I'll see you next Saturday.